Smaller groups, so I'm excited to hear from all of you. So, are we?
I'm sorry, this is just not a real good solution.
Just get yourself comfortable, move it around. Just stay in your pods-ish.
Okay.
Because we'll be having conversations with each other and then sharing. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And you won't have to listen, watch the monitor much longer. I just want to make sure he's okay. Are we good? We're going to try to record it. So thank you so much for coming out to our second listening session. Keith asked a really great question. He asked what the format for today would be, and the format will continue to be the same. The first session, second session, third session, they're going to be the same. Why? Because we want consistent data. So we want to ask the same questions, have the same format of discussion, so that when we gather the ideas, we can really, as a leadership team, decide, how to move forward. So if you've been here before, Keith, maybe you'll help them out and show them the way. But as we engage today, we do ask that everyone adhere to a few simple but powerful commitments. This is really, really important. So we want you to speak your truth but remain kind. We want you to listen and to understand and not respond. And then everyone has a voice, so no one is going to dominate the conversation. We want to make sure that tonight is structured in a way where everyone will get a chance to speak out, share their thoughts. Everyone else will listen, and then at the end we'll gather all of the ideas. And I'm going to ask someone to be the note taker, so if you want to start talking about that, and someone to be the reporter, and you'll come up actually, and speak up here so that they can hear and as we're recording. So if you want to, I would love that. It isn't time yet, but I'll let you know when. Okay. Yeah, so if you actually want to pull in a chair and sit in. So I'm Edith Corrington. I'm the bilingual director for the district and community outreach, and I would like to start with introductions if you don't mind. So do you want to start?
I'm Stephanie Fletcher. We are Westmont residents, lived for about 5 years.
I'm Mike Fletcher, so I'm repeating all that. and while we haven't had any children over years old, I've been very impressed with at least the stuff I see. You should also just preface, I've worked in my career and went back to school after I retired and
My name is Ryan. My father is Tim. We're both alumni. Well, I'm not alumni from Westmont High School, so I've been here 19 years. Keith Denton, alumni. I think it was 52 years, something like that.
I've worked in Westmont since 2013. I have kids, both at Manning, one who's starting in the junior high next year, actually. I'm on the school board as well, so.
I'm Anna Calderon. I'm the kindergarten teacher over at Miller, and I will be starting in 11th year in the district in August.
I'm Vanessa Posinoni. I'm a Westmont resident. I went to Westmont High School, and I just finished my first year teaching kindergarten at Miller.
I'm Eileen Saxa, and my husband John and I have lived here in Westmont for 22 years. I work in the district as a paraprofessional. I started my career at the junior high. Then I went to the preschool for a year, and now this is my hopefully third year at Miller for first grade. And no reason to be afraid of the junior high.
I think I'm more afraid for just how my daughter's going to be. I know she'll be fine. But.
He has no longer friends with her.
I'm John Sachs.
Everything she said.
2 years, and other than putting 3 kids through various stages of the school system, I'm not associated with the school.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
Carlos.
Oh, Carlos Evia. We know you.
Westmont resident for almost 6 years now. School board member. Have a kid headed to junior high. I'm not nearly as important as fearful for the school or for my son to do it, but he is excited to go and change. I don't know what to expect.
Expect great things. They're going to love it. They're going to love it. So the way our time together is going to work is you are already in small groups. Everyone will have a chance to speak. I'm going to pose a question. You're all going to have a chance to just share your thoughts. After that, you'll come together and just talk as a group about everything. That's when the note takers will, kind of highlight your thoughts. Because that's then what we're going to take as a leadership team. So I'm going to ask you guys to come up and just kind of share the thoughts of your group. So I'll set a timer just so that we don't go on, because I know there's another meeting after this. So we're going to start with the speaking round on this specific question. If you want to take a look. As we continue working on solving the facilities issues, what do you need to hear? So I want you to just think about that a little bit. So what would be important for you to hear?
Isn't the question what you need?
What do you need us to hear? Yes, what do you need us to hear? So who's gonna start us off? Because are we doing two small groups or? Let's do two small groups. Okay. Yeah, let's do two small groups if you want to move it this way. That way we won't get this long.
I think one thing that comes to mind,
So do you want to start?
especially for kids that receive services, a lot of them are just in has history. Like there's not a space for all those kids to receive services. All the talk of the kids, you're young, so sometimes it's hard to keep up to your right, so it's a lot of distraction for them. That's one thing that kind of especially sale and so on the sites. Over some of the costs that we're looking at. Some of the small group groups, some of the access, like that's a flexible space.
What happens to the remaining and how do they figure in the financing? Right?
That would be a big help.
It's obviously, it's a real estate that has value on it.
They're having 3 people go in there, or they're having them wash their hands.
In terms of facilities or other solutions.
I think all of them here is to just the
Work.
temperature.
Again, as you've been scanning the cars, make it work. I've been in schools, I've been in school, where I had to just my team. But I was young, I was doing stuff, but I thought this was. And actually,
Question, how can we continue patch work?
right, and the associated costs that go with it, because those people get training. And I know that you have kids who are able. It's just kind of motivating here.
Those 3 accidents.
Something I would like to know is
How is that higher ups in yours?
Because I know the last one.
Those specific issues. So really nice
I know that
issues.
you've been talking
Related
about
to
looking for
your
a
house.
successful.
Place of work, or any place else you go to. And how would you feel if your, where you worked?
There was a reference in past. I don't think there's ever been a reference.
That's what I got.
Or there were space to actually have conversations.
There hasn't been a referendum in its past. Maybe there may be another referendum.
Yeah.
Well, attempted, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably 98% of the.
Might have been on those issues.
Because I just see stuff like that, you know, I.
Could relate
I
to
said, why you guys want more?
But they need to have it
And then we checked it out.
in tangible ways.
So the
And
question
you guys
is
just did
why we
that
need more money?
in like 30 seconds. Hear it that clearly and that concise. You know, to see it.
The standards.
I don't, I mean,
It's not necessarily true.
Bureaucratic.
Not necessarily true.
I think we want to leave this as a listening session. This isn't about like testing or reviewing ideas or. Yeah, it's more about hearing from you and hearing from him.
Say it's hot. Yeah. I mean, another, so it's like, Rick came on, so we have, they wiggle, they need that. Time to go outside and all, rain, snow, they're on the little front flex.
Wait, what?
Muddy, it's worth a huddle.
So the appraisal, the three buildings, that was an appraisal that they agreed to. It had been agreed, it had been appraised.
Or even like, having.
So they agreed to.
Going back to the classroom.
So what's the thing that you want us to hear? Appraise value, like, appraise value from accurate, or right?
We have lunch in the classroom and have the gym open for them to run around. You guys know the gym. That's something.
What information source would you trust?
Yeah, we have your lunch. Yeah, we have it yours.
I mean, we're spending money on everything else.
Right.
You know,
Independent appraisal by like a.
$2 off the windows on
I
every
would be
deal.
able to.
Right. But an independent appraisal by,
I know lots of do that.
Right.
so maybe we would get an independent appraisal for others.
Yeah, in the classroom, but yeah, but on those rainy days. Yeah. They really need to move around and 30 minutes of PE in the morning.
I volunteered for that.
In the afternoon.
I can't even remember the internet. I go back, I've just.
You say we're done.
Free. No structure. Just open the gym, run around.
I need to know how much extra costs. What are the additional maintenance costs?
I think it's an interesting suggestion. I mean,
Yeah.
we throw numbers around, where do they come from?
I know everybody
Our school,
that works for
facilities
facilities.
themselves.
They're going to report.
So for example, if you compare like Clark Hill School, whatever the school is out in Chicago, how much do they spend on maintenance?
Our short term is-
And how much do our schools?
Where would that money go?
Size, whichever one you want.
Yeah, I think this,
Because that's money that's lost from
yeah, this falls, I think this falls into the category of
nobody.
how long, you asked the question, how long do we continue to maintain that in perpetual manning? What are the associated costs? So yeah, it falls into that question.
$400,000.
Did you have another question that you should go around the circle again, or give another?
And I'm amazed
Give them a second.
you know, some number per year compared to maintenance on a newer school system.
Yeah, the referendum passed and we had spent money there.
I don't see that
Well, here's the thing, let's say for instance, the decision.
I didn't feel that was clearly communicated.
Or
Somewhere
somewhere
else
else
to
then I put them back in his wise to invest the money as it is.
I don't realize it was that.
And yeah, you know, we did take a tour and went to one of the sessions. And it was, it was effective as a presentation. But that's not an effective presentation for people who are concerned about common first. You have to give the reason to draw them in, or at least give somebody a financial reason that to save.
No, no. So the way the tip is for the downtown district.
By maintaining a newer building.
One of the things that we are doing as well,
It's
as
a
a result
possible
of
people
listening, is putting together even more details
to maintain the car, you pay less.
and vetting them and making sure they're on.
Then you
Because
just
we
want to
know that
select.
then people will, for good reason, scrutinize them, but try to put together instead of what the cost of running each of the buildings
Like from.
in very detailed.
So the four numbers in this, three of them are fundamentally, where is the information? Most of these things we talked about, we've had appraisal done on we know what the matrix looks like, or we know how management sales, managing the figure, the finance. agree with the four questions we're asked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, to me, it's a lot about how do we compile
How to make it more compelling
and
document.
disseminate that.
I mean, I really like
And
this.
if we haven't done it for example, independent appraisal, how hard it is.
We have done an appraisal. Those are not cheap. They cost this money, we're trying to, actually, that's better. I don't know if we had a written agreement that we could produce that says, for instance, the warehouse buildings, we should, the ones by Time
Oh, the buildings that we would be
purchasing.
Oh.
The fear I have is that a lot of
Now,
no voters.
appraisal for Manning and Miller, that what we're not yet getting sold those are estimates, I will be honest about that.
Were you referring to appraisal for the Manning Miller? That's what I found my head.
Throughout the 70 million.
I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I guess at school they were down and down.
So now, they're like, I know my taxes have to go to school, but.
About halfway was down on
How many was I ride my bike on the track all the time. I have no recollection. I'm not remembering, but I only started riding down this like 4 or 5 years. It's before that that I would.
And some of
Okay,
them
if you can start wrapping up this question.
So just out of curiosity, are you looking for appraisal on Manning Miller or Manning Miller and what you're referring to as the warehouse? So
I would like all of them.
I mean, I can't think of a better appraisal than the value of someone's looking to sell it for. That's the ultimate appraisal. The appraised value of something, somebody comes out and says, I think this is worth this. When someone says, I'll sell it to you for this, that's better than an appraisal. That's the value we can never pass you.
we already have to
Occupy the space for a period of time. And another look at the value will be another decide to say here until
This is the extra.
Interesting, it's an interesting question.
Carlos, are you ready to share?
Yes.
Yes.
What's that?
You'll have to come up to the microphone because they're recording it.
So we had 4 participants in our group. There were 4 questions or comments. One was a little more clarity around what would happen to Miller and Manning if a referendum were to pass and a new building were to be built. What would happen to Manning and Miller, and how does whatever would happen with them, how does it figure into the financing of the overall project? If I've said anything that's not right, if I haven't captured that right, let me know. The other question or comment was, how long can we continue to maintain or patchwork Manning School, and what are the associated costs? What does the maintenance plan for Manning look like over, say, the next 5, 10, or longer years, if it's assumed that we can go that long? Another question was, why do we need more money if bonds have been passed in the past? And the last one was getting an independent appraisal of the properties in question. So both Manning and Miller, what are the sell values of Manning and Miller, but per independent appraisal, and what are the buy values of the properties that we're looking at as part of the plan to build a new school. So
I'd like to add that Jeff was saying that there was going to be what's wrong with Manning, and Nicholas Brothers doing that, or is somebody else?
It's a coordinated effort between Nicholas and Leggett.
You know, because they're the ones that, they're fighting for this, and they donated tens of thousands of dollars to the yes people. And, you know, they got a little more skin in the game than I'm comfortable with. Have them come and praise Manning, what's wrong with it. It's terrible. So
I have the same problem whenever I hire a real estate agent to represent me, because I know that they get paid a commission based on, they get paid an amount off the value, so I always wonder, are they looking out for my best interest or not? But in the end, you got to hire someone and go with them, right, and work that relationship. So I can understand why you'd be uncomfortable. But yeah, so that was the feedback from the group. I think, honestly, when I look at the 4 of them, I think there's a lot of work that's been done on at least 3 of them, and I just feel like there's information sharing is a big issue that we have to address, like how we share information.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if we
Which,
have it.
which specific issue?
Well, whether it's like how Manning and Miller or the sale of Manning and Miller figure into the financing of the overall project, you know, if it's a question in someone's mind who bothered to come here tonight and is paying attention to things, then that means that, and it's information that we know we have, then we haven't done a good job communicating it. I mean, to me, it's that simple, you know. So, and that's just one example.
Thank you.
Okay, also had four members in our discussion group, and definitely some overlaps and things that we talked about. But the first thing that came up when we were really just looking at this question, what do you need us to hear? Like, what do people in the community need us as leaders to hear and need other community members to hear? And the first thing that came up was that we need space. The kids need space. There's not enough space right now to provide services for students in the schools. And that's because the traditional classroom space doesn't work for the amount of students who have IEPs, 504s, things like that, and need to have a different kind of instruction or support services provided. That's typically happening now in the hallways. Which is not an ideal space. If you're a kiddo who's already struggling to focus and learn in the classroom, and then you're taken out into the hallway, and then you've got a kid going through the hallway, that's actually probably making it worse, quite frankly. And so, so that's a huge challenge that they're experiencing. So that space for students who receive services. The second topic that came up was just repairs in general, and there were several different things that they talked about. We focused on Miller specifically. I can't remember if I mentioned that. But one of the things for repairs was something as simple, I think is simple. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but like the bathrooms don't all function properly, and so you send a group of kiddos into the bathroom to wash their hands and use the restroom, and there's only a couple functioning toilets, a couple functioning sinks, and so it's taking a long time, and it's a huge disruption to instructional time and the learning process for students, not to mention probably pretty gross and unsanitary that we don't have enough functioning sinks for students to wash their hands. So basic things like that onto much larger things like temperature control being a big issue. And so it sounds like at Miller, the biggest issue is heat, actually, like that it's too hot all the time, even in the middle of winter. The temperature control is very inconsistent. There is air conditioning, but when you get to the higher levels, it's much warmer, and if you need something repaired, it takes a really long time, likely because these are things that are much older. Either way, and this is typical of any, like even if I grew up in a house in LaGrange, it's 100 years old, and temperature control was an issue there, so older buildings just have this challenge. Another challenge with space and with repairs, and this goes to the repair or the outside space not being functional all the time, is recess space. And recess sounds kind of like it's just running around, who really cares about recess, but and this is something I think we could do a better job of with communication. Sorry group, I'm going a little rogue again, but I think that we need to include a little bit more research. When we're talking to the public, we listen to research from lawyers and doctors, we listen to experts in the community who work in construction, but we need to listen to the research-based evidence about how recess helps students learn better and helps them to perform better, about how temperature does impact learning, and that research does exist, and we need to not just say that, we need to provide it for people. And so I think that comes back to our fourth point. I think I'm on my fourth point. I tried to organize this as best I could, which is the same thing that the last group talked about, which is communication. I think that's where we have not yet figured out the right way to reach the community, to get them information in a clear way, in a concise way, in a way that shows that we are doing our due diligence to research these things, to do these not audit, what was the word? Appraisals of the different properties. We're not just saying that, you know, it's nice for kids to have a bright, well temperature controlled, clean building with separate space for this. It's actually what is best for them, according to research. And then just clear, concise, I think too. I thought it would be good to hear from teachers more because those are the people who are in the buildings more. We heard that people did like being in Manning, like being able to walk around and see. So I think more opportunities to see those spaces is really helpful. I really liked this idea about how, like, one of the data points that could be much more clearly communicated is how much extra we're spending compared to districts that do have newer buildings. Because especially for people who are struggling with the financial commitment that a referendum might cause, it would be helpful to know, like, well, yes, it is a commitment, but here's how much money we're essentially wasting every year trying to upkeep old buildings. But getting some harder data on that compared to what's happening in some other districts would be helpful. So it sounds like we all landed in that same place of some better communication.
Before we move on, in terms of communication, how did you find out about tonight's meeting? If I can ask. How did you know about our listening session?
I volunteered for the April referendum, and so I've been watching the
Social media? Okay, what about you, Ryan?
Social media and like stuff throughout the websites.
Okay.
Oh, just, you know, every meeting.
How did you find out about our meeting tonight?
I'm a precinct committee person in Westmont. I represent the Oakwood subdivision. And so the Westmont precinct committee people are getting involved with local government here. So we're going to all the meetings, we're going to village board meetings, library meetings. And during the last drive in April, I sent out probably over 200 letters to people in the Oakwood subdivision. I went to about 100 homes to talk to people. And my reception for this referendum was, I put your little brochure and everything that I did. My reception was extremely good, very positive. The only group that was negative was for the older people. But there are limitations on taxation for older people. There's exemptions that they qualify for. There's certain income brackets that they don't have any type of a tax increase in that. And I think maybe communicating that better would be a real good idea. You know what I mean? And because I talked to a couple of people and let them know that, but then I talked to maybe, we came up with 5 older people, and that, you know, that was it. There's probably a lot more. Because people talk in generalities like that and they don't really know all the facts. And I think that the opposition was a lot better organized than we were. They had people going out during the week on campus, and I saw them, you know, on Oakwood canvassing and that. They were a lot better organized than you were, and they raised really realistic type of information that people had to consider, and it wasn't responded to appropriately.
Can you give us an example of that?
I'm sorry?
Can you give us an example of what you just mentioned?
Well, like classrooms are too small, or classrooms, the schools have empty. Okay, so people are saying, well, if the schools have empty, why should we build a new school? So that's a fact. That has to be, you have to cover that with something.
But is it a fact?
I'm sorry?
Is it a fact?
I don't know, but this is what they were advertising. So if you're advertising something, they're creating skepticism in people's minds.
Look at the average age of people in Westmont. When's the last time they've been to a school?
Right.
That's probably true too, okay? But you have to remember that, you know, most of the people who will vote against something like that will probably be the conservative Republican group, okay? And they will latch on to anything that's in that category of psychology. Okay, they'll latch on to it. They'll say, all these people are just trying to get into school to, you know, kind of like make themselves look good.
Kim, I really appreciate your perspective. Besides, like, some of the things that we're not responding to, besides the schools half empty, can you think of another one? I'm not saying if you can't, you can't, but what was another thing that you thought was?
I'd have to look at their list, but I haven't looked at their list for a while.
Okay,
But
understood.
I remember when I looked at it, I had people show me, said, oh, I got this from the other guys. What do you think about
So
this?
you're on the fence about it.
Well, Jack, they're always.
What, me? Oh, no, I was for the school. I'm always for progress. I'm always for progress. To me, a new
You
school,
know, you mentioned the taxes.
but I'm not saying what people mention to me.
I know, but I'm saying that tax thing is very hard with a lot of older people. But the limit is like 64,000. Okay? Now, last year, everybody got that social security raise. Okay? I know people that got an extra $700, put them over to 64,000. Now their taxes went up almost $2,000 because they went over the threshold.
Oh, okay.
So now they go back to this level. So now you got somebody on a fixed time, they got a $700 bump, but their taxes went up $2,000.
Well, what I tell
Now,
voters
if
is,
then they're gonna hit the referendum, you're talking another 1,400 on top of the 600 they got, so you're talking another $4,000.
what I tell voters is, when in your lifetime have the taxes ever gone down? There's more people, so there's more taxes, because there's more government. So, you know, is it gonna go up 10 years from now? Probably will. But that's the kind of world we live in, just to show them that, you know, realistically, will taxes ever go down by half? Probably not. You know, it just doesn't work that way. And everybody really knows that. So,
Actually, with the referendum, this dollar amount would not change for 30 years and then it would go away.
oh, okay.
So it
I'll
actually
put
would
that-
be
that's-
one tax.
Well, let's put that in there.
Because it's essentially a
Let's
regular mortgage.
put that in there.
That thing we need to get.
Let's say
Yes.
this year my house goes up, let's say next year is 490. Let's say this year is 490. So next year my house goes to 500. You rest this the same percentage.
This referendum is not about a percentage, it's about a one-time.
So whatever my house
Think of it
is
much
appraised-
more as a mortgage than how your taxes
Whatever
are.
my house is appraised this year,
And amount stays the same.
it'll never, so if my house doubles in value.
So it's a one-time, it's us borrowing, not us, the school district borrowing money. So that's what it, yeah, it's a one-time, it's much more.
In theory, the rate should go down. So if your house gets appraised at 10% more, and the school district needs the same amount of money, the rate that the school district should be asking for, or whatever, should go down. Maybe it's 9% or whatever,
Well,
but
she says it's gonna stay.
No,
No,
so
it's
the
not
tax
all.
rate is different than the referendum amount. The referendum amount is like your mortgage
okay, so it's a fixed amount, and it's gonna be,
for 30
is it
years.
specifically gonna be identified on your tax bill?
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's
Oh,
good.
that,
Yeah.
you should, let's communicate that to people.
Yeah, you should say that.
And I think this is the point of
That's
your comment.
positivity.
I think this is the point of your comment, is that, the point I take away, and I don't know if it's what I hear is, you know, there's information out there, but what is fact about how the taxes work? What is fact about the size of the school and occupancy? What are the facts? Because I think again, I keep coming back to communication. These are things that are knowable. They're not unknowns. They're knowable things, and therefore the information can be shared. Pilot share, sorry.
I do think that we do have to think about specifically when responding to something, the district has to think about that because the district can't take a stance. The district can put information out there, but the district cannot, if the district is responding to a political stance, that could be viewed as a district taking a stance of for or against, and the district
Yeah, it
is
is-
not
it
allowed to
doesn't
do that.
A lot of the information that came out last week for the referendum from a very, very conservative.
And it was very, very deliberate.
It
Yeah.
was,
That's all available, and you
Yeah.
can be more proactive and look at it.
But
Yeah.
I got to push back on the first pamphlet that came out, very beginning. boiler room, the other things. That was all boom and boom pictures. You know what I mean? They pushed the same narrative at the very beginning. That was like, oh, come on. You
The
know?
district has to say why we need the money. And also, and this is where it's a really fine line, right? Doing town halls and saying, this is why we're asking for this money, and that wasn't a fake picture. That was a
Well, that was
picture
vandalism.
of the boiler.
I know, but the slide was vandalism.
Okay, we heard the
I don't
last,
have
we
a-
heard the last points, but we do have to move on to the second question because we're actually running out of time. So, if you can look up on the screen, we need these meetings to be longer. So I'd like you to think about, and then again, if you, please go around, I want to make sure everyone has the chance to speak on this. What alternatives to the proposed referendum would you like to see explored?
Yeah.
So if you want to,
I think we will context of the question. So the referendum was for a specific plan to build a new school, right?
You would still have to have a referendum
You would.
to repair buildings.
You would.
So there is no alternative to a referendum.
No.
Am I correct?
Actually, they
There's
do.
alternatives, saying that.
No, we're not.
That's not what the question's asking. I think.
Say that again?
I actually don't think that one of the options is not a referendum.
And how would you deal with repairs and things?
Do that.
Yeah.
Or
But I think that is an option.
So this is, if I could just say this very quickly. We put the idea of a new building being constructed across entire Warner Park as an option. And if that, is it because, for people who have a different point of view, is it because you need more information about that? Or is it because you would rather see the existing schools, Manning and Miller, repaired? Or is there another option? We're really open to, is it, that option was a good option, we need more time and more information? Or no, we are more interested in rehabilitating the two existing buildings? Or no, is there a chance to build a new building in someplace else in the district? Or renovate some, or.
So is that
or-
alternatives?
Yes. Yeah.
So not alternatives necessarily to another referendum. I think we can, let's just not talk about money, let's talk about, what do we need, what do we want? Is it a new school in a new place, is it renovated buildings, is it because the proposed referendum was for a new school at Time Warner. So what are the alternatives to that? I think is the
It's just
question, right?
difficult to discuss though, given the fact that on an individual, until we talk about what would cause you to refurb these buildings. I mean,
Well, that's something we're working on.
right.
And that was a point I brought up, but I don't think it was the first list. But if you talk about actually, because I think location was a lot of people, and so I think if you talk about refurbishing those buildings to be what they need to be, just bare minimum health and safety, you still need it.
And refurbishing them while you're continuing to try to provide.
Correct. You need pods, you need this,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So let's just do like.
Does the question now make a little more sense or no?
Option two, I would say additions. Coming here, have
Miller
another
has
pass,
I think Mann has a little more space, but
and it was.
refurbish Manning and put all of the elements.
So,
Or refurbish Miller and.
Right.
Because actually Miller is
Basically,
more.
facilities while you're.
more physical space around it.
Right, and then you could add on to that. Right,
I
you're
saw it.
still talking- you're still talking whatever. But if I put it in there, you know, if we expanded the whole elementary school would be part of there. That would be, not granted, it would still require a referendum. But I
We don't know somebody who
comment,
is
I think
actually
people like the schools. And.
He's the head of maintenance.
I have,
Bruce Walker.
yeah, I don't have kids from the school system, but on my two lots, between me and I
But he worked
live
with,
right
he's
down
the
the street
guy
from
in
there.
charge of.
There are probably 12 or 15 elementary school education.
Or it's not only just for the kids, the 2-year-old twins next door, and the 2-year-old across the street, are there,
Soon to be.
will soon be. And so, you know, the ability to walk to school, I'm sure for a lot of people, and I heard that at campus in the neighborhood.
Specific house.
Yeah, and I heard that a lot growing up at East Trails or that subdivision. You go down Norfolk, it's part
Oh,
of Clarendon
Blackhawk
Hills.
Heights.
Blackhawk Heights, thank you. It's part of Clarendon Hills, but it feeds into that. And a lot of people still the same thing, they love getting the schools right
Totally down, building, and rebuild. Or can we just totally rehab?
No, I'll
what's
put my
inside?
grandchildren
Is the
live in
building
Blackhawk
itself, the structure itself,
They will be going there.
sound enough that we can just go inside and just
I'm old enough to have.
rip everything up? Oh, inside, and then
No,
just
I
rebuild.
think it's,
We need to find that.
Well, I think.
I guess I would agree with what you were just bringing up. Is there a way to like,
I mean, I think that it was like, oh, the building.
throw it somewhere and make it
Especially
like,
here, it's like
all of these kids
off.
necessary for.
We had pre-K, well, it's different, you know, the first time pre-K, okay, the second time.
Is the plan to keep them in the building, or they gonna stay inside?
So, keep South as a pre-K.
Okay. Right now, because they're for
It's approximately K-5, 6th grade, it's approximately 600 students. It's about 100 students per grade.
in Mill right now, that 600 has less.
Miller has 200, Manning has about 400.
So I'm just going out of limit, figuring lower than probably require a really large expansion. There was more than that, they don't gonna walk on the ground and it's a very nice area. That's a problem, Andy, you're just really gonna lot in.
What happened to that?
I just want to know why Mueller, I mean, happy doing like more of that space. I know some things that Mueller has so much space. I wish that they could do everything like that. I know you guys have a summer, you know, but I don't know if that's what you're using. I went to school, I know it was basic, so I was there, but I know, I don't really know, even though it's first grader playing soccer, you know.
That's fixed now.
I think this is a floor,
So here's how I'm, here's how I'm.
The Miller be expanded is your.
yes, I want, you know.
But you'll be there.
Technically, when I gave you first bought our house, I noticed
Didn't look
kids
at
now
our
are
space.
that's separately from class.
How many was
space
vacant?
and more rooms.
Okay. And
What
you,
already do not have money, the first building's gonna require.
and then by year 15, you can start to. Fast.
We're only looking at 90,000 square feet. You know, it's all that, that's what we have now.
Because it's a flat. It's a flat.
We need a better,
Structure that that's.
the architects are done a lot better because they use with that. No water retention, you gotta have to make pond in flats, you know what it, green space.
That's just the way it's.
That's just what the architects on foot.
We were
All right, we have 1
Is
minute
that an
left.
alternative to the proposed referendum to stage board? I'm not sure if I'm hearing the.
Well, I just, what are we gaining versus remodel?
No, the question on the board is what alternative to the proposed referendum would you like to see explore? I'm not sure I'm hearing that. I appreciate your comments, but I'm not. You want us to manage. So the 4 people that spoke to the boards, it's for Miller, it's for Manning. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
I don't think, I don't have an alternative, I would go for referendum again. I just think you have to communicate a lot better. You have to try harder to sell it. The voters that I've done this for a couple of years now, the voters are a sophisticated group. They look stuff up, they're smart, which they're invincible. They will go with positivity, they will go with facts. But if the other side presents a lot of skepticism, that will overcome it. But I really have an alternative. I would go for another referendum. I would try harder to sell it. You know, when I go to people's houses, I make sure that everything I give them gets into their hands. I saw the brochure that was being handed out in the grass, underneath the doormat, and I was sitting there thinking, rubber band, stick it on the doormat, and they actually have to take it off. I thought we think about the details. You have to make sure that get in front of them. The information gets in front of them is very important. It's supposed to. It's lying in the grass. I got blown around.
All right, so if you, we're gonna do the same thing, so Carlos and Jessica, we can come up and share or summarize.
So in terms of proposed alternatives to the referendum, our group settled fundamentally on the comments from, there were 5 people in the group this time, but that centered around exploring more possibilities with expansion of either Miller or Manning, the existing properties. A couple of the comments were basically that Miller, while it's housing fewer kids now, has more space around it, and therefore has potentially more opportunity to be added on to, right? And then I think more or less the case for Manning was just the fact that it's more in the neighborhood, in the downtown, as it's more of a neighborhood school. Not that Miller is not a neighborhood school. I don't think anyone said that, but just the location of Manning being nice. And then the last comment was not really about a proposed alternative to the referendum, but rather just a suggestion of more and better communication around the referendum, which we've talked about quite a bit tonight. So
I think that was really important what you said here at the end, because when we were canvassing, there were many people that weren't home. And so we had to just do that with flyers. And so maybe thinking about canvassing at different times, different days, I think is going to be important as well.
Can I say something though? Because I know when the last referendum was passed, I know it was during spring break. I know a lot of people were definitely out of town. I just know that with the communication, I just feel like right there, those that, you know, were aware, I just think it was a bad time to write for that, you know?
I was gonna say, to the point that we brought up, if you explore these alternatives, I think it's really good to let the public know that you've done that.
Right.
And what are those comparative values? Okay, and then really it doesn't look like, gee, I never considered that.
Right. Column A, column B, column C. This is why we're choosing column D.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I have a problem. I got to go to a meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I think more appraisals would be more costs. Somebody to come in and give actual estimates on repairs, not just one company that's heavily involved in the referendum.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no trust there.
Okay.
But
Let's hear
come and say-
let's hear from this one.
What were you going to say?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, just, we talked about this, to that gentleman's issue about timing and spring break.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers on the 2 referendums, one that was basically 50-50 and another one that was large negative, the negative votes, the number of votes went down, the no votes went down by maybe a couple of hundred, I think, from the first referendum to the second referendum. On the yes side, the yes side lost something like 40% of its votes. Now that could be because people were on spring break, or it could be you lost them for some other reason. You have to figure out where those votes went, or why they stayed home or didn't show.
Thank you.
With the new tax bill that everybody got this year was a shot. Now, get it again next year, plus the referendum one. That's a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah, so, alternative, so we very much answered the question, like, alternatives to the proposed referendum, meaning like this solution to build a brand-new school at Ty Warner Park, and alternatives to that, I mean, really, possibly demoing and rebuilding like Manning or Miller, because we thought maybe location was a really big sticking point for people, having it located next to the other schools and not being walkable for people who are on this side of the tracks. One of the things that, I'm sorry, can you remind me your name? John, that John mentioned was that there is a local private school that recently just did that, and they might be a good group to check with as far as like how they managed that teaching and learning process, having to build while kids are also learning. St. Isaac Jogues, it's a private school. Oh, they rehabbed, right? They rehabbed the whole building?
The whole internal without.
While school was going on.
And that didn't cost wasn't that much, right?
What?
There was a lot of donations, but it wasn't that cost, wasn't. Because I mean, they
Don't know anything about cost, don't know anything.
Just know it happened, and that's why we thought it would be a good.
I don't think it was that crazy.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, I think that the general feeling in this group is that a new building is the best way to go, and to find a way to find the funds to get a new building, and to figure out where the best place for that is. But I think the biggest challenge, and this is where, because we don't want to be irresponsible with money, is to figure out like if we're going to do, like I think the benefit of building new on a different land where kids are not learning is that we have to figure out how much it's going to cost to move kids around and what that's going to do to other buildings, because that does come at a cost. So if people feel, if we can get more yes voters by saying it's going to be Miller or Manning, enough to pass a referendum, because that's what this group feels is probably best, then where do we put those kids? And has that cost been explored? Could we explore that cost so that we can be transparent about those numbers as well? Is there anything I should add? I feel like, did I capture our conversation well enough?
Can I just add on over at Miller, I know, because I do recess and lunch duty, when it does rain, snow, like, yes, we have more land, but it still gets like soggy and muddy.
It's not usable.
We were told we couldn't park towards the back, like towards the houses, because that is also sinking in. So like, that would another structure piece, like
how much will that cost to get that leveled?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think honestly, in a perfect world, we can just like, hey, demo this building, build a new. Manning is an awesome location. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But how practical is it financially?
Well, again, thank you so much for coming. We value your feedback, and like I said, truly are here to listen and decide how we're going to move forward. So before you all leave us, we want to know how we did. Do you feel like you were able to speak your truth but remain respectful and kind? Do you feel like you were listened to? Do you feel like everyone had a voice? Do you feel like we did a good job with that? Any last thoughts? Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming.